Metaphorically, we die when we don't use our gifts. I believe that the root of me, the root of my strength and my power is in my ability to live in the mess and in the suffering and move through it to still be the light. I don't believe it's a choice of self-work and social work. I think that we're spending too much time in our culture thinking we have to heal our inner selves and figure out who we are while the world is suffering and our gifts are rotting. So we can heal and we can serve simultaneously.
Hello and welcome back to the Connected Mindset Live. I'm your host, Greg Tomczyk. Another beautiful day to be here with you guys and share a very special guest with you. We have Miss Kate McKay with us. Kate, thanks so much for joining us on the Connected Mindset Live.
I'm thrilled to be here. And first of all, your intro is just off the chain good. That's a good one, Greg. Yeah, I'm back here going like this.
Got to get the energy upbeat and wake people up wherever they are in the world. And I know it's 9 a.m. on our side of the world, but people may just be going to bed or just waking up. So it's an honor to have you here, Kate. How we like to start the show is with a little bit of a deeper question. What does myself and the audience really need to understand about the younger Kate to understand the Kate that's sitting with us today?
That's such a powerful question because I truly believe we are who we originally were and we just lost ourselves along the way, right? And part of it, the work certainly I do as a speaker and a coach is help people identify and relate to that younger version. And the question really is, who were you before everyone told you were too much of something? And, you know, we can ask a crowd of 500 people, 1,000 people, what did you hear you were two of? You know, and I was too enthusiastic too. What about you, Greg? What did you hear you were two of when you were growing up?
Yeah, too quiet.
Too quiet, right? Yeah. Too introspective. Yeah. Right? So can you imagine that quality about you was actually something that we decide that it's not a good thing, right? The parts of us that are actually our superpower. And I think my journey back to who I am sitting here today with you, Greg, is really embracing the fact that to be too enthusiastic, there's nothing wrong with that. And enthusiasm means to live in the energy of God. It means in God or in the divine. And so when I looked that up, I'm like, okay, so why do people have a problem with that? So it's sort of like, you know, bringing the sense of humor and joy, even in dark places. That's my work here, not just to initiate, but to ignite people. And that doesn't come with, you know, it's a small package, but it comes with some big energy.
Yes, it does. You're definitely a light to everybody you interact with. And I appreciate that. I love how you mentioned our younger selves. I've always thought about, you know, recently as I've, you know, worked through things and kind of talked in different conflicting conversations, and we'll get to how people can get there to be more comfortable with those deeper conversations. But I've always felt like I needed to create a safe space for that younger Greg, the Greg that was the thinker, the person that was, you know, very thoughtful in the way that he spoke his word. And some people would say, you're too quiet, you need to talk more. But that's been one of the things I've been able to create a safe space around, and then let that shine in the right communities and the right areas. And I've had a lot of people come to me and say, I really appreciate how you listen to me. And that's been the biggest enhancer of my career. Is most of the things that I do is listening to people and then kind of, you know, being introspective on what I've learned and then giving them a potential strategy or lesson to learn from. And I think it's just so incredible when we can not get rid of our past self and just say that's in the past, you know, that doesn't mean anything, but really create a safe space around it and then let kind of that light be our biggest superpower, as you mentioned.
So powerful. Dude, listen to you dropping the mic. Well, the thing is, I love that you use the language safe space around really what is your core essence. And when you do a deeper dive into what men in particular, because I coach a lot of men. I have, because I think of my athletic and my business, I'm more in tune with the male mindset in some ways. I don't know why, but it's for me, I just feel more comfortable in it, to be honest. Women are confusing. I love them, but we are confusing. And I am one. I play that on TV. But
Yeah.
what you said about the safe space, so we hear that men, they need respect, right? That's a lot of what you hear. But really, truly, what men need more than anything is a sense of safety, to feel like they're safe. And the fact that you created safe space for yourself and that uniqueness, what is your essence, so that other people can be invited into that, is a powerful use of the gift. It's so powerful.
Yeah. I was avoiding it for a long time. I was the person that wanted to make everybody happy. I avoided conflict. I knew I wanted to say something to somebody that I felt could impact them, but I thought it might rub them the wrong way. And I avoided that for so long. And then once I started to just inch my way towards it, and kind of keep that security, but kind of unleash it to somebody else, that's when everything started to really rapidly grow. And that's what I try to teach people today is if you can connect to that past self and then you can connect to those hard, deeper conversations, you're going to be way better off. And that's why I love this type of format because we can dive deeper, we can explore lessons, and each person listening in today, including myself, walks away better off. So
So true. I remember seeing a book when I was younger, and it was talking about open communication, and it was honesty over harmony. So a lot of times people think that if I say that, then it's going to mess things up or it's going to make it worse, right? So if we know that we can be lovingly honest and lovingly direct, but also, and ultimately the goal is to keep the harmony, right? But we can't have harmony if there's disharmony within us. And if we're walking around suppressing, like, too quiet, too loud, too kind, too this, too that, too aggressive, whatever that is, that's really the gateway to where we're here to serve. I truly believe it is. And if we can tap into that and honor that part of us and then bring people in there, that's true ultimately what I believe that the warrior edge is all about.
yeah, it is. It absolutely is. I know you talk a lot about agility. You talk a lot about the warrior mindset. What does agility mean in the way that you describe it, and how does it kind of play out in the real world?
Oh boy, this is the best. So agility, right? We think of oftentimes of an athlete, right? That they're agile on the field. They're light on their feet, right? But the core of agility isn't just that. And so if we look at it, something which I love, this term psychological fortitude, I believe that's at the core of what agility is. That a great player, a great CEO, a great lover, we have a foundation, and the foundation is the psychological fortitude, which is we know who we are and we can dance from that place. We can't really be resilient without fortitude. And I think we live in a culture where people are, oh, resiliency, and vulnerability, and these words, but they're used in a way that weakens our foundation. And there's no way that I could have, Greg, to be perfectly honest, um, went through the loss of my child, my son Will, without extraordinary psychological fortitude. And I think people were shocked. They didn't understand how I could persevere. But I believe that the root of me, the root of my strength and my power is in my ability to live in the mess and in the suffering and move through it to still be the light. I don't believe it's a choice of self work and social work. I think that we're spending too much time in our culture thinking we have to heal our inner selves and figure out who we are while the world is suffering and our gifts are rotting. So we can heal and we can serve simultaneously. And that time is coming where we're going to need people. My book, The Agility Mindset, with the subtitle, Adapt or Die in a Rapidly Changing World. Now, maybe it's a little dramatic, right? But metaphorically, we die when we don't use our gifts. And we're in a world right now where, yes, we're in a re-evolutionary wheel. There's a lot of people stuck in the comfort zone. And yet, hear me out, there are people that are in a de-evolution circle. They're dying, right? Whether it's addictions, lack of connection, whatever that is, they're actually in a slow burn. And we as the warriors or people that are here and committed, we are in the evolutionary cycle. We're here and saying there's more, there's more than this. And it takes great courage and psychological fortitude to break out of your family origin stories, from your friends, from, because warriors, we're not like everybody else. We're different. And people will say, you work too hard, Greg. You're this, you're that. And you're like, wow, am I? Or am I supposed to be following this norm for harmony's sake, or for me, just to dim myself to fit in so that other people are comfortable? I'm not here to make people uncomfortable. And I think that's the younger version of me, is I think that I was so positive because that was my role in my family. One of 9 kids, Greg. And my job with a mother that was completely overwhelmed and depressed was to make her happy. So I would entertain her. That was my role. Ta-da, doing what I did, ironing like naked and doing like crazy things. My mother thought I was the greatest thing since cake and ice cream. But then I came to school, and I wasn't so great, right? I was too big. People didn't like it that I was too big for my britches, as my mom would say, right?
Yeah.
So it's a journey that we go through to come back into our power. And, if there's someone in us that ignites us, that's the thing that keeps us woke, because there are a lot of people that are sleeping. So I say, let's rise into that evolutionary and understand that it's not easy, that it's a challenge, and we have to have the mindset. And my number one pillar in the book is balance is bullshit. Like it's an illusion. If you think you're going to balance your life and balance your relationship, if you're spending mental energy trying to balance, it's the quickest way to mediocrity. It's the quickest way. Either that, or my son Will. He was elegant, Greg. He was gorgeous. He was gritty. He is, in essence, the agility mindset. He was the grittiest person I know, the most spiritual person I know, the one that understood the balance was complete BS. He was obsessed with learning and understanding. And in fact, he went into his death that same way. He was meditating 8-10 hours a day. Right. And I thought, oh my God, my son, he's a priest, because he was in a Buddhist monastery. Little did I know there's such a thing as spiritual bypass. So, but that's what I mean. He isolated and I didn't notice. So if you know anyone isolating, it doesn't have to be they're meditating 8-10 hours a day. They're by themselves. Usually I call this out at the end of the interview, but I would like to say, if someone comes to mind right now that struggling, I believe you have a responsibility to reach out to that person, even if it's just, hey, thinking of you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything more than that, particularly with men. It can be that small. I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. What's up? Thinking of you. I love the story when. Give them a memory, because people stay and connect to themselves by the memory when someone remembers who they were. Right?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great stuff. I love it. It's something I see a lot of people go through when they transition out of baseball. I was a pro baseball player, so I still come across a lot of guys that are getting out of baseball, and for some reason they resonate back to me because I've had a lot of those conversations publicly on the pain that I went through, where I had to figure out what mask or what identity I had to pick up to transition from baseball player in a box to somebody else, or that new version of Greg. And a lot of them go through years and years of vices and different things to try to get that light bulb moment of, now I have clarity. But I think it's hard for people to find that. And curious if you've seen anything in transition periods like that, where people can, and it's not the balance, but do that internal work, but also go out and serve the world at the same time. I think people think of them as separate. I'm either serving all day, or I'm looking internally and kind of
reflecting. Comes from the same source. Mm-hmm. It does. Like, in essence, all the work that we're doing, it comes from the same source. And I love this question because I think it's also very similar with military and sport. It's the same mindset of success, that it's a single-minded focus. So how do we, first, second, third home run, or I'm, filling out a military strategy, right? Because we have pressure, and we've created pressure, and our environment has created pressure that we succeed in. So then all of a sudden we don't have that pressure. Who the frig are we? And I believe that that's why I weight train. I believe that's why I've competed for 17 years in bikini, because even though I'm 61, because I need that pressure. I'm like one of those little kids that's bowling, right? And they put up those bumpers. Like, our life needs parameters, and we have to create them after we go through a transition. And it comes back to rewriting your story. You have to rewrite your story. And through every loss, whether it's you're out of your sport, you're home from from a war, you're leaving a job and coming up, it's like, for me, after Will died, I remember like it was like day 8 or 9, and you wake up in the morning, right, and you're like, that's got to be a dream, right? It's got to be a dream, because you remember, right? And then I just remember laying there, and my daughter was next to me because we were just kind of hunkered up for a couple months, and I remember just like tears just coming down my face, just silent ones, those. And I was like, wow. I was like, God, you have a sense of humor. Because, Greg, my mission statement, to live powerfully with courage and enthusiasm. I wasn't going to change my mission statement. So I realized, I was like, God, let's go. Because if there's a way to do grief with powerfulness and courage and enthusiasm, watch me. And I think that I did that. I think I upset a lot of people, my family of origin. Listen, the bottom line is my brother was murdered at the same age my son took his own life. I had trauma in my family, and they didn't like it. People aren't going to like it when you transition into somebody else, when you start speaking your truth. I believe that's the hardest part for most people in the transition, that when you start being you, people are going to be like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? That voice from our childhood, that we were too much or something, right? So I think that it's very difficult. And yet we have to create a newer vision as warriors. You and I were talking about this. Part of the mindset of the agility mindset is curiosity and innovation. And that grows confidence. Confidence happens when we practice something a lot, right? You know this in sport. We grow our competency, and that grows our confidence. And it's called the confidence competency loop in psychological terms, right? It's something that we can apply to any new skill. There are things in our lives that we want to do that we don't feel confident in. We're not going to feel confident, but we have to go with this stuff with the mindset of a beginner's mind, because that truly is a pathway to greatness. Mess up a bunch, mess up.
Yeah. Through pressure. I love how you mentioned pressure and how key pressure is, because I feel like at the points in my journey where I felt the most pressure, I also had the most clarity. And I've talked about that a little bit. We did a study on what word is mentioned the most throughout the episodes we've had of this show, and the word is clarity, where people said, I lack clarity, or I'm trying to find clarity, or I was looking for clarity, and then this happened.
Yes. Beautiful. Well, it's one of the high performance habits. So I'm a certified high performance coach. And the number one habit of for people high performance is they have clarity. I call it future focused clarity, but it's really knowing who you are. Number one, 3 words describe who you are at your highest and best. Because as Alex Hormozy said, you may not feel worthy in this moment. You not feel like you deserve it. That doesn't mean you don't do it. We're all waiting to be like, oh, I'm so worthy. I deserve all this success. No, you don't. Your future self gets it. Your present moment doesn't. You feel like a fear and all this stuff that comes up. But the clarity comes despite that. It comes despite that. I know me at my highest and best self is meticulous. Is whatever these words are, write these down. Y'all listening, write them down. Who are you at your highest and best self? And then why those words are important. I make my people put them on the phone so that every single day it reminds them who they are. Because the thing is, you only forgot. You know what I mean? Clarity means you just forgot. You're sleeping. Wake up. And then you have to measure how you want your interactions. Do you want them to be, for you, the big one was to be honest, truthful, real, right? Relationships have to be that way for you, Greg, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be any other way. You can't have phony conversations. It's not your game. You won't do it. I think now you'd walk away, you know? So it's having that level of clarity in who you are. And And I think most important is that we have to have a future vision. And that's not like putting pieces of paper together with, I want this life. Science proves that those vision boards don't actually work, because you look at it, you get a dopamine hit, and you're like, that was good. That's why pornography is so dangerous, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have the vision, but the vision has to be, how is it going to feel? And a lot of warriors are shut off from the feeling, but we have to know what it feels like in your heart, because a true warrior has a heart behind the shield, right? And we got to know what that heart's telling us, and who is it calling us to serve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed about the best leaders, coaches that I've come across is they're not only emotionally intelligent inside, is that they can feel other people's emotions as well. And I think that it took a lot of work to get there. But I think that they have that future, they're casting this future vision, but they also feel as they navigate through it, which I think makes them impactful, influential, successful, whatever word you want to put to it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the ones that don't have that, it's hard for them to connect with their athletes or the people on their team or
anyone,
and influence,
because they're not even connected to themselves, right? So this is a question I'm going to ask you and your audience, and this is from High Performance. I'm certified through Brendan Bouchard. But if you were looking, Greg, for an example at all the gifts that were put into you when you were born, like this soul, Greg T, boom, he came down in the world. He's a unique little bundle of something. Unique, only yours. From 1 to 100, what percentage of that have you tapped into?
Yeah, very little.
What, throw me a percent.
40%.
40%, right on. So this is truth. Average high performer, people are killing it like you, between 40 and 60%. You're right in there, right? And so the work of people like me and you is to fill the gap for other people, right? It's to fill our gap from 40 to 100. That's what I do as a coach. But then how do we fill the gap, and who are we bringing on as disciples or teammates or board or in our board of directors to help us A-game? That's why I say this group of people who are in evolution are the people we want to hang with. We can't serve people in the re-evolutionary. It's like, these are all the therapists, all the people are doing good work, but they can't help these people down here. The people who are going to help them, the people who are in the evolutionary path, they're going to 10x the world. Politics is in this re-evolutionary cycle. I don't even talk about it. It's like talking about like what your pawn move is in chess. It's so small change. There's things that are so much larger and bigger than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recently, this is something I've written in one of my books, but my mom's mom used to ask me when I would see her, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I used to always say, President of the United States. And she'd say, anybody's better than the current president, whoever it was at the time. And as I've gone through my journey of baseball and seeing great coaches and cybersecurity and on all these different paths I've been on, and I also believe in this evolutionary, you have to have a leader that you're kind of looking up to, somebody that's pushing you from behind as well. And I told my friends recently, I'm like, I told my Nana that a long time ago, but I still believe that that's something that I want to do in the future, because I feel like somebody needs to be leading the country, the world in a way that you're talking about, where they're casting this vision of not just how we live, but how we think and how we model what kind of continual growth looks like at the personal level. We don't get that enough.
No, in fact, I was listening because I had a long drive. I was listening to an interview with Rock, and I learned so much about leadership from him, because when he says yes to something, he always has a bunch of people that says me too. Yeah. Like, people fall because he has a leadership ability, but he also understands he's master at nurturing relationships of people that are A-game players. And people always busting him like, are you running for president, right? And he won't say. He's still kind of cagey. I was like, that was interesting, because it was a newer interview. It was just from like a few days ago. I was like, oh, okay. But he had that gift, exactly what you're talking about, that even when like Hollywood was like, no, you need to lose weight. And so he tried to do that. And then he was like, no, Hollywood's got to conform to me. And he wasn't arrogant about it. See, that's the thing. If you saw earlier interviews of The Rock, he was very insecure. He came across very two-dimensional. but he learned that his charisma, his confidence grew the more experience he had at being his authentic self, despite the abuse, the poverty, the things that he grew up with. And look at him rise. You know, I think he's a good example. Whatever people think of him, I think he's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's done so much, and people only see the movies and the clothing brands, but when you listen to him talk about what his future vision is, how he his heart for people and his community, I mean, it's just amazing, the feeling that he gives off, not just the words that he's speaking.
You just gave me goosebumps even just telling me that.
Yeah.
Because it's true. For me, it was like, oh, wow, I see where I need to improve, because I don't have that ability, because I never felt confident enough to say, hey, follow me. It's like, I remember one of my first coaches, she was like, I had built like a 7-figure company. I was flipping grilled cheese with one hand and buying and selling gold on the open market with the other, when I was like, just like everything was blowing up in my life in 2008 with the economy. And so I grew this company, and I was a theater major, right? So like I said, grilled cheese, open market, gold, right? I'm like commodities broker. And I remember my coach saying to me, Kate, she goes, you know, you have to learn leadership. I said, no, my parents taught me leadership, because my parents were civil rights activists. They were super into like civil rights. That was their thing. You know, Martin Luther King, second God of my family. And she goes, no, Katie, your parents didn't teach you leadership. They taught you advocacy. I was like, dang, right? Because a leader, it's different. Leader is the visionary. And it takes great courage to understand yourself enough to know that you have a vision that other people can follow. Because, you know, it's so much easier to be like, yeah, I believe in you, right? But it's, I believe in this. I think we need a team of people around us to have that kind of conviction. And Rock really highlighted that for me.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think one of the things that sticks out from what you've noticed about his evolution is when he was, didn't have the confidence, and then he moved to a place of more authentic and was just living how he knew he needed to live, and didn't care what Hollywood thought, or, he created pressure for himself to obviously stretch outside of that. And I think a lot of people talk about authenticity. When I think of authenticity, I think of they have a purpose, and then they go do it without kind of those second, third, fourth guesses of, oh, should I do this? Should I not do this?
Right, what people are thinking of it, right? It's sort of the way that I feel about the word vulnerability. And I don't really like that word, to be honest. I know it gets a lot of play, but I like the way Brendan Bouchard talks about it. He says assertive vulnerability. That means you're asserting yourself. You're not a mush. Like vulnerability sounds, oh, I'm just being vulnerable, which is kind of an excuse for people to be rude, to be honest. Like, I'm just telling you my truth. Well, it's rude because you're being disrespectful. So I like the idea of assertive vulnerability, where you're staking your claim in your own space, and you're understanding what are you going to get into and what are you not going to get into as far as conversation, which is a significant point. And, I think we should talk a little bit, because we did talk about this originally, about relationships and how to handle conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's where I found my best relationships. When I was avoiding conflict, I was attracting people that maybe brought conflict to me. And then, I kind of was able to put out some of the fire. So I was just solving versus actually bringing something to the table, where I was meeting that person in the middle and kind of speaking what I thought was right. And those relationships where it was, wow, this is mutually beneficial. We're both growing. It's not just they're growing through Greg and kind of being a listening board. So.
Right, because it is everything in particular. Like, I guess the way that coaching is different versus therapy is that it's an influence relationship. It's like, I'm not higher up, or therapy is a little bit more like I'm in charge a little bit. I don't know. I have a mixed feeling about therapy, where coaching is, this is an influential relationship. I'm just mirroring you. So it requires a level of equal honesty. And I really like that aspect of it, right? And I think it's taught me to be, I mean, granted, my kids are like, stop coaching me, right? But it does shift things. And I think an important discernment, and this is a tip that I find really powerful, is that a therapist will ask you why, and we all know a time where someone said to us,
Mhm.
why'd you do that? Right? That's like shame and guilt question, right? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? That triggers a lot of people. A lot of women and men have conversations like this where it's like, why'd you do that? Or why we need to talk to our children like that, right? And it's basically talking down to somebody. But a more powerful way to communicate, and it requires some checking in, is to say when something happens and maybe it hurts you, is wow, when that happened, when you said that, kind of made me feel like I was going to throw up, or it made me feel, right? When that happened, it made me feel. No, that's not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying that's the way that I felt. And people who are not super healthy aren't going to love this, but it's okay. They're going to be mad at you and they're going to flip you off or whatever, but it's okay because you have been assertively
Yeah.
vulnerable, right? And this is what Rock models, because Rock talked about this a lot, that he had anxiety and depression, acute.
Mm.
And when he started talking, like you said, all of a sudden he started showing his authentic, real self. Even David Goggins talks about it. He was like, I put everything out there, so I got no shame because I don't want anything hidden. So you guys know
Yeah.
all my dirt. A little bit
Mhm.
extreme, but I still love him. But so that is one way. And the way that we, instead of the why, in coaching, we use what, where, when, and how. The way that we get in the present moment, and then we future cast. I use the word future cast
Yeah.
because ultimately that's the goal. And as leaders, as warriors, as people that are leading the charge in this evolution, we have to be the ones that are setting the standard of how healthy communication happens. So when this happened, this made me feel. What are the ways that you would like this relationship to go? What's your vision for this relationship? And then shut up.
Yeah.
This is particularly true with women, I think, because women talk a lot over men. I'm not sure what your audience is, but I witness this a lot. I'll ask a man a question and his wife will answer. And I'll be like, wow. Like I asked this dude a question, and we have to give people time to process their answers. Women in general are in relationship based all the time. Men aren't. Their connection's different. Doesn't make it any less valuable. People. It
Mm.
doesn't. It's just because they're watching the game this way and they're hanging out together is no different from going and a woman hanging out with her girlfriends and chatting about whatever, right? It's the same intimacy, and they're both okay, right? They're both perfect. So asking the forward question of how do you want this relationship to go? What do you want it to look like? And then be quiet and listen and say, wow, what I want in this relationship is blank. Can we agree on? And remembering we're on the same team, right? If
Yeah.
you're in an intimate relationship with somebody, we're anything, you're both looking this way. As soon as you get on the opposite sides of the team, I
Mm.
remember watching like MMA fighting and I was like, oh my God, it's so violent. And I was like so horrified. But at the end, when they're hugging each other and they're thanking each other and they're weeping, it's like they're like basically loving like the most intimate love. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, that is beautiful. It's so unusual for me to witness it. But think about that. The core beginning prefix of competition is is community. I'm here to play a game with other people. And if that means that we say community or we say competition, bring me the A game people, because that's where we're going to have the biggest growth and impact. Is that helpful at
Absolutely.
all?
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people hear the why, they continue to hear the whys. And I
Mm.
grew up in a military family, military community, and then baseball. And everybody just asked, why did you do that? Or why did you, make that wrong decision? And it was emotions made guys, men weak in those communities. Nobody would ask, how did that make you feel? Because that would be weakness. And then they'd be like, oh, you're up in your emotions. We can't put you on the field, or we can't put you, on this mission. And
Yes.
once I had a coach and a mentor ask me, what feeling made you take that action, or what do you want to see from your company at this point, and how does that make you feel when you get there, and things of that nature. I started to feel that I actually had emotions, and I had a heart that was big and wanted to be released, but it was being kind of pushed down, depressed, and kind of contracted in a way that I wouldn't allow people to feel that emotion because that was weakness in my
Right.
past mindset.
That's why I use the word psychological with men, because psychological can be mental and emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you can be like psychologically, like, you can kind of enter in the conversation. If I see I'm talking to a client on Zoom, I bring up the story. I love this man, younger guy, like late 20s. And I'm like, Bud, and he's telling me something, and all of a sudden, like, emotion comes through him, right? I'm like, hey, dude, what just happened right there? And he's like, what? I'm like, something just happened, dude. And I'm like, where'd you feel that? And he goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, where'd you feel that? Like in your body, And I'm like talking like I'm a kid. Then he goes, my trunk? And I go, oh, your trunk. So is that like, and I'm dead serious. I'm like, your heart, your belly, like and he's like, my heart. I go, oh yeah, your heart. Oof, yeah, I feel that, right? So I was modeling it. How do you get out of the intellectual mind into the body? Because athletes, you're somatic, right? Military, you got to be somatic. You're all keyed up. Your peripheral vision is your brilliance and everything, right? But your emotions are keying in too here, right? And so how do we tune into that? I love that story because I'll never forget him and his face and the ability for me to stay dead on serious when he said trunk. I was like, I love him so much.
Yeah. It's close. He was feeling it, right?
He identified. We just had to hone it a little bit.
Yeah. Wow.
But that is truly it, right? It's taking the intellectual mind and the psychological mind, bringing those together, because we can't do one without the other. We can't disassociate, And like you said, it's like in military and business and sport, men, it's here, right? And the only part where they can really be, in their bodies with sex or work, that's really where it's approved. You guys have a narrow line to walk, and that upsets me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. So true. About 70% of our audience are male entrepreneurs. The other are either female entrepreneurs or female leaders that are looking for ways to kind of connect the two. Because if you're leading a company of majority female or majority male, you have to lead in a potentially somewhat different way and talk to people differently. I know a lot of leaders we're treating men and women way different. But what you're kind of hinting at is that there's a way to just be the leader that feels through situations, as opposed to being like, I need to treat this person this way and this person this way. And that, I think, is like, that was the leader trying to find balance between the two different types of people that they were leading. And I think a lot of leaders found themselves having trouble influencing people because of that mind frame perspective mindset.
Right. Or keeping them separate, right? My personal life and okay, that's personal life. And that used to be separate. And I think that causes, in fact, I was on NASDAQ and I was talking about that. And before, you could probably bifurcate those two and be successful professionally, and your personal life could be a mess. But now you just can't do it. It's just like it's impossible by the way the businesses are run these days. They're too much based on relationship, successful business, right? So if your professional life's here and your personal life's here, it's going to be a lot of averages. So you have to be able to resonate to be able to rise to that higher level, to have a greater impact. And oftentimes when I ask that question of the 1 to 100 and where people are, and they'll say, yeah, I'm living, like, when they give me a high number, I'm always like, wow, okay, that's interesting, right? When next time I talk to them, it's not going to be that. Because, like people are like, I'm at 90%. I'm like, that's so awesome, right? But are you really impacting the number of people? Maybe you feel personally that you've tapped in, but have you impacted the people? I'm humbled by the level of people that I can actually touch. That's what keeps me humble, is that this conversation is a fragment to help me fill that gap, to help more people, even piss them off a little bit. Maybe they don't like me. I'm okay if people don't like me. I'm still going to love you back. And because I know I'm here on a mission. And igniting doesn't always feel that good.
Yeah. You can burn, right?
Yeah, that's why I laugh a lot, because laughter really is the best medicine. Because life is heavy. Life's a drag, right? There's a lot of heavy things, and I know trauma, and I know how hard it can be. But I do believe that my gift is my ability to laugh at even in insanity.
Yeah.
Because what else are you going to do? It's
Yeah,
a
right.
surrender. It's my white flag. It's like, and it's a great pressure relief.
Yeah.
I talked to a client yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And like her husband got in trouble with, gave her a list of like the therapists for her to find him a therapist. And she's like, I really want to give him that back. I'm like, dude, absolutely. And laugh about it. Don't make it so heavy. It's not like he handed you a corrected paper for you to correct. Just be like, oh, dude, like that was so weird that I accepted that. But like, this is nothing to do with me, dude. I believe that you're going to be able to, find the right one. And like, don't make it heavy. Just hand it back, right? We think that everything has to be so heavy. And maybe try a different strategy. Sometimes we're just too dang serious.
Yeah, especially when we're in our head, right? When we're in our
Yeah.
head, not our body. And
Mm.
curious what you found to get people out of that, like get below the barrier, like what questions they need to ask, or what, maybe it's exercise just to kind of get in your body and move around to get that feeling. But I just see so many people starting companies and growing companies, and you just see them as, this above, because that's where they're sitting. It's like deactivated below the neck
Mm.
down.
This is a story I'm going to tell you, and it was a book. I want to say it was Eric Greitens. I have a couple books that I'm going to suggest. One of them is Resilience by Eric Greitens. It's absolutely phenomenal. A war story, coming back from war and letters to each other. It's very stoic related. It is one of the best books out there. My top 3. And also, I just finished reading 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Absolutely must read for psychological strategy. This is all about the psychological fortitude. Now you know why I'm so obsessed. But it's the story about, I think it was Eric. It could have not been, but he decided he was going to go to a journey and he was going to go road trip it. So he's out in the middle of the highway. He's from East Coast or whatever, and he's thumbing. And he's sitting there waiting to get, start sticking his thumb out, and he sees like this homeless guy coming up to him. And he's like shuffling his way like a quarter mile up. And he's like, stands up like, this guy's going to mug me. And the guy reaches out and he hands him his sandwich because he wasn't going to be called to work that day. So he goes, I bet you're hungry. And then he shuffled away. And he was like, wow, a guy just gave me his lunch. Like, that's crazy. And then he was out, cut to the next scene in the book. And he's out in the back country of Austria with Aborigine. I don't even know. It was like someplace with the tribal leader, and they didn't even have English. And they were out hunting. Day 7, right? And they came across day 2, a bunch of guys like dying from starvation, literally dying. And the chief gives the guys food. And Eric's like, wait a minute, you just gave us our food. Now we're not going to be able to hunt for the 7 days. And he's like, chief was pissed. And then he's like, like he couldn't really understand. And then all of a sudden he goes like this. He goes, if I didn't give that away, I'd be dead inside. Dead inside.
Yeah.
So Eric knew that homeless man knew that he, even as a poor, impoverished man, that he was still giving his food. And that's so symbolic of we don't want to be dead inside. If you're dead inside, wake up.
Yeah.
If you're dead inside, there are people that are waiting to have you serve them and ignite them. And inside of you, there is a lot of potential, of fulfillment, of meaning, of emotion, of expression, of love, of life that we need. Like I said, there is a sense of urgency, rapidly changing time. It's like adapt or die. It's time to adapt. It's time to grow. There's a lot of people around you. I'm here. Greg, you're here to raise up the game together. Because you know what? Bottom line, it's funner together.
It is. It really is funner together. I love how you mentioned laughter, because you have a contagious laugh. So I appreciate that about you. And Andrew Huberman actually talks about how stressed we all are and how do we get through that stress in moments. And he talks about like a deep sigh, but laughter gives you that same feeling
It
where
does.
if you just start to laugh, you get that same like stress relief, and your body just instantly relaxes.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's
your head
funner too.
doesn't, but
Yeah, and it's funner too because people like, I remember I was filming like a TV show, and one of the producers was like, Katie, you got to stop laughing like that. I go, dude, it's too heavy, man. Like, we're talking about really heavy things, but it's too heavy. No one's going to like that, right? And he's like, that's inappropriate. I'm like, dude, it just has to be. because no one wants things to be so very heavy. It's a beautiful story about post Auschwitz, post the Holocaust, that there were two sects of people that survived, right? There were the ones that once they got out, their shades were never open. They lived in the darkness. They were dead inside.
Yeah.
And then there were the people with the shades open, living the joy of life. I choose to be the one that raises the shade. It's a choice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think people do that if they feel inside that there's darkness, there's, that they're not alive, maybe they don't feel a purpose, like they have so much unclarity and they're focused on making the next dollar, so they can't have their purpose or go after it. I don't think they're not future casting, like you mentioned. They're in the now only. They're like, I have to make the next dollar to buy the next gallon of gas so that I can drive here. And
it's true. And I would say to you, like what David Goggins says, it's you're your purpose. Your purpose isn't out here. Like literally legit. Your purpose is you in this moment, here to step 1 foot forward to serve. Through the fear, through the unknown. Clarity doesn't mean the way, that the path is clear like the yellow brick road. It means that you're clear enough that you're not going to settle for this. Sometimes that's all the clarity you need. I am worth more than this.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's fuel enough. Change your state. It's a big one. That's why I lift weights. I don't know who I would be if I didn't lift weights. I've been lifting since I was 21. Yeah. I literally don't know who I would be. I don't know what my identity would be, because it's so tied up into my identity, because weight training centers me. And now we know the science, and we always knew there's people in the bodybuilding or athletic space. We all knew, you and I knew, Greg, that what the changes that exercise did to the brain. But now they're saying, oh, well, it's a mitochondria and it boosts your brain health and this and that. Yeah. Yesterday I was in Goodwill. I'm in Atlanta. I needed different shoes. And I can't tell you the number of people that came up to me. You're so fit. I don't think of myself as super fit. I just don't. But people are like, how do you look like you do? And every single person, I'm like, go lift weights. You got to lift weights. And I don't even mince words anymore. Go lift weights. Go lift heavy weights. And then, talk to me. Yeah. But I truly believe that weight training, you can walk, you can do Pilates, nothing is going to grow your brain better than healthy muscle. Muscles are an organ. So much is happening in the muscles to help you health all around, not just your joints, not just the way you look. I want to be moving till the day I die. I don't want someone else changing me. I don't want to burden that. I want to just go out. Like my dad lived to 91. He was super, like he was Y member for like 65 years. I'm built just like him, He was a hyper kind of nervous dude, but even with 9 kids, he still hit that gym. And as soon as I saw him getting up like an old man from a desk, I'm like, Dad, what are you doing, dude? I'm like, activate your glutes. And I'm like, and he's like, oh. And I lay on the floor. I'm having him do glute bridges. And my sisters are like, what are you doing? Let him be old. I'm like, no. Because I knew as soon as I saw that it wasn't long, and I was right. So it's like, we've got to stay active. We got to keep those glutes active, because the glutes are our driver, right? Glutes are our driving force that drive us forward, our posterior chain. So we need to make sure, if other people aren't pushing us from behind, we need to draft with our own musculature.
Yeah. That's so critical. I mean, as an athlete, it was like baked into me. But I've found through my journey after athletics, I'm still an athlete, and people notice that when I go speak. I had somebody about 2 weeks ago come up to me and say, I want to start a company, but it's too hard. And I said, do you lift weights? Do you exercise? How hard was it to get started? And how, some days when you wake up, you don't want to do it, and it's very hard. But if you put one foot in front of the other and you're focused on just getting up and going, I know after every workout, I've never felt worse. I always feel better after I walk, run, lift weights.
Even when it's not a great workout,
same when you
right? Even when it's not great, but you didn't give up on yourself, right? And I think that's the part, that the worthiness starts by not giving up on yourself. And I think that when we're thinking about balance, we're thinking we have to balance everybody else. No, we have to balance the gift that we were given. Then everything comes from that. Whatever people's affiliation is with God or spirituality, our first relationship is a vertical one. Yeah. It's a vertical one. Everything else stems this way after we're right in the vertical relationship, right? It's a process that I have to reset every morning, especially after Will died. I was like, oh, I really need to work more rigorously on setting this right.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's what happens. Life knocks you down. But just like Les Brown says, just make sure you land on your back. Because if you can look up, you can get up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so true.
It is, yeah. That's kind of future casting. It's looking forward, which I think
Yes.
is so
Into the
powerful.
light,
Yeah.
into the light, into the light. One final story, and this is General Patton. Okay. I love this story. This is the second law in the 33 strategies of war, the second one. Okay. And so Patton came from an incredible military family, right? Legendary. And here he is. He's on the front line. He's ready to fight, right? But he's there, and all of a sudden he feels terrified. He feels fear, insurmountable, huge amounts. And he has that instinct to step back away. And then out in the mist, Greg, he sees all his ancestors. They're in the mist. And you know what they say? Charge, move forward, step forward. So the reason why Patton would always go to the front line, even though he was a general, is because he had to feel the fear to look for who's in the mist. If you don't know who's in the mist waiting for you, that's your job to figure it the frig out. Because there are people waiting for you to serve them. And if you only see yourself with a tall Starbucks and a bunch of money and a Maserati or whatever's now trending, it ain't going to be that cool, right? Think of Patton. Who's in the mist? Step forward with fear, trepidation, but step forward.
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps. Look in the mist, folks. I think that's something I've noticed when I pitch my best games or gave my best talk or whatever it was. Whenever I feel that, like I forget all my words, I look for somebody in the first couple aisles, and that's like my mist. Or I look for a family member that's passed, and that brings me back down to earth, and it opens me up, and it's like an out of body experience. It really is.
Oh, right on. I love that you share that, Greg. Thank you so much. So you get that story, and so do I, right? And I think that if people really hear that, and it may piss you off, it may bring you tears, it may be like woo-ha, it doesn't matter. But if you feel something, that's all that matters when we tell our story, that you feel something inside of you wake up. Don't be dead inside. Don't be dead inside.
Yeah. Kate, I want to acknowledge you for being the light for so many people. This has been such an incredible conversation. I know I've learned so much, and it's really helped me take a step forward today. I know it's going to allow people to take their next step forward today, but also as this lives on far beyond us. And I think that's why we both do it. It's going to continue to bring a light along a journey for years, decades to come. And I'm really excited about that. Before we get to the final question, where can folks find you? I know you have a new book coming out. Where can they find that?
So if you want to reach out, I'll send you the link to Greg so you can share it with your audience. But if you go to kate-mckay.com and you can reach out to me, I think I had the free book for my best-selling book, Claim Your Inner Badass. I also have a book called Claim Your Inner Warrior that's dedicated to men. But I'm offering a free copy of the Agility Mindset, just the first few chapters. So I'll be happy to share that link with your audience, and so you can learn how to stay agile and build that psychological fortitude. We need warriors, and we need warriors that move forward with confidence and curiosity and an innovative spirit, because that's truly what it means to not only survive but thrive.
Absolutely, that's what we all want to do. We're not here to survive. We're here to thrive and make the world a better place than we found it. We'll put all those details in the show notes. Kate, one of the final questions we like to ask on the show, because it's all about connection and being deeper connected to the world around us, being better connected so that we can have the impact that we've talked about through this episode. So I'm curious what connection means to you.
That would go to my son, Will. when he was in the monastery. He came back from the monastery, but he would travel. He would get in his car and he would just be gone. Like, he was always happy, like peaceful. I'm like, babe, you gotta let me know where you are. You know, I got my mommy GPS on. I need to know you're okay. And he looked at me and he goes, Mom, I'm always gonna be okay. And I said, I know, baby, I know. So what I want to say to all of you is that I'm here more deeply connected to all of you because my son showed me what it was to be connected on a far bigger realm. So I have greater confidence in the light, in knowing that we are all here to serve and we're all going to be okay. We're all going to be okay if we keep reaching into the light.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for everything you're doing. Definitely looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Me too, Greg.